Captain Jack stood motionless on the bridge of his scout ship, his 4 eyes fixed on the blue-green planet spinning slowly on the main screen. In his 300 years of exploring the galaxy for the Council, he had never seen anything quite like this world. The planet's readings made no sense at all. "Run the atmospheric scan again," he ordered his ship's computer. The results remained the same. A highly reactive mixture of gases that should have been impossible for any advanced life to survive in. The oxygen levels alone would cause spontaneous combustion on most civilized worlds. But that wasn't even the strangest part. The temperature readings from the surface ranged from freezing to boiling, sometimes in the same region within a single planetary rotation. The gravity was crushing by galactic standards, yet the preliminary scans showed large creatures moving about with ease. "Ship, begin detailed surface analysis," Jack commanded, his outer membrane rippling with nervous excitement. This was his last mission before retirement, and he had hoped for something simple. Instead, he had stumbled upon what might be the most hostile planet ever discovered. The ship's sensors probed deeper into the planet's mysteries. Suddenly, warning lights flashed across the control panel. The ship's external sensors began producing conflicting readings. "Warning," the ship's computer announced. "Extreme electromagnetic interference detected. Multiple radiation types present. Sensor calibration failing." Jack's protective membrane tightened instinctively. No natural planet should be producing this kind of interference. Yet as he watched the readings, he realized this world was doing exactly that. Even more incredibly, the sensors were picking up clear signs of technological civilization developing right in the middle of this chaos. "Magnify Sector 7, he ordered, focusing on one of the larger land masses. The image zoomed in to reveal something that made his primary heart skip a beat. Cities, sprawling metropolises of metal and stone, built right there on the surface, exposed to the deadly oxygen atmosphere. As he watched, a massive metal vehicle lifted off from the surface, climbing through the corrosive air with casual ease. These creatures weren't just surviving in this death trap, they were mastering it. "Begin biological scan of dominant species," Jack said, his voice barely a whisper. The results made him question everything he knew about life in the galaxy. These creatures, these humans, according to the linguistic analysis of their broadcast signals, were walking chemical factories. Their bodies contained acids strong enough to dissolve metal. They had internal symbiotic relationships with millions of microscopic organisms. Their cells could repair themselves, and their bones would knit back together if broken. Most terrifying of all, they were adaptable. The scans showed humans living in frozen wastelands, scorching deserts, and everything in between. They had settlements in places where the atmospheric pressure would crush most species, and in elevations where the air was so thin it would kill any reasonable life form. "Computer, prepare emergency transmission to the Galactic Council," Jack said, his membrane now fully contracted in stress. "Priority level. Urgent. Subject, discovery of Class X Death World." As the computer prepared the transmission, Jack watched a group of young humans on the surface. They were deliberately throwing themselves down a snow-covered mountain at high speed, using primitive devices strapped to their feet. They were laughing. These incredibly durable creatures were enjoying activities that would be fatal to most species. "Addendum to transmission," Jack added, his voice shaking slightly. "The dominant species appears to seek out dangerous situations intentionally. Exercise extreme caution in any future contact scenarios." The message shot out through subspace as Jack continued to observe the planet with a mixture of horror and fascination. In all his years of exploration, he had never encountered a species that treated the most hostile environment he'd ever seen as a playground. The Galactic Council needed to know about Earth. They needed to know right now. Because if these humans ever decided to leave their death world, the galaxy would never be the same. The Galactic Council's emergency response ship dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the solar system. Inside, 3 of the galaxy's top experts prepared for what might be the most dangerous mission of their careers. Dr. Mark adjusted his protective suit for the 4th time. As the team's xenobiologist, he had studied life forms from over 1,000 worlds, but nothing had prepared him for what the initial scans revealed about Earth's creatures. "Are you seeing these readings?" Professor Ann called from her station. The atmospheric specialists' sensory tentacles were twitching with excitement. The humans pump out waste oxygen as a byproduct of their energy production. They're literally polluting their world with a highly reactive gas and then breathing it. Commander Tom, the military advisor, floated over to examine her screens. His metallic scales reflected the soft blue light of the ship's interior. "That's not even the most concerning part," he said, pulling up his own data. "These humans regularly expose themselves to high-energy electromagnetic radiation from their star for purely aesthetic reasons. They call it tanning." The assessment ship moved closer to Earth, its advanced sensors gathering more disturbing information with each passing moment. The team had been sent to verify Captain Jack's incredible report, but the reality was even more shocking than they had expected. "Look at this," Dr. Mark called out, his voice trembling. "Their young engage in something called sports. They deliberately collide with each other at high speeds, risking severe physical damage. For entertainment. And their bodies, they just repair themselves afterward." Professor Ann's analysis of Earth's atmosphere revealed more terrifying details. The air pressure at sea level would crush most species, and the temperature variations. Some humans live in places that swing from freezing to boiling in the same day cycle. They just put on different coverings and continue their activities. Commander Tom was particularly troubled by the humans' relationship with their world's massive oceans. They willingly enter these death traps filled with toxic salt water and deadly predators. Some even do it for fun. And look here, they've built massive vessels to float on the surface during something they call storms. The team spent 3 Earth days observing the planet, each hour bringing new revelations that challenged their understanding of what was possible. They watched humans consume substances that would be classified as dangerous toxins on any civilized world. Coffee, alcohol, spicy foods. Some humans even deliberately aged their food, letting it develop dangerous bacterial cultures they called cheese and yogurt. "We need to report this to the Council immediately," Commander Tom said, his scales shifting to a pale gray color of concern. "These humans aren't just surviving on a death world. They're thriving on it, and they're advancing rapidly." Dr. Mark nodded in agreement while reviewing his notes. "Their medical technology is particularly worrying. Instead of using proper cellular regeneration, they cut themselves open to fix internal problems. And they survive. Their healing abilities are unprecedented." Professor Ann added her own concerns to the report. "They've already begun altering their environment on a massive scale. They build structures that pierce the clouds, create artificial islands, and tunnel through solid rock. No other known species would dare to modify a death world so drastically." As the team prepared their final report, they watched a group of humans preparing to jump out of a perfectly functional flying machine with nothing but fabric bags to slow their fall. It was called skydiving, according to their research. "Add a final note," Commander Tom said quietly. "The humans appear to be completely unaware of how extraordinary their capabilities are. They consider their deadly planet normal, and their remarkable resilience ordinary. This makes them even more dangerous. They don't know their own strength." The assessment ship began its journey back to the Galactic Council, carrying a report that would cause chaos in the galactic community. Earth wasn't just a death world. It was home to a species that had mastered it. And they were looking to the stars. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council erupted into chaos as the assessment team's report was displayed on the massive holographic screen. Representatives from 500 worlds spoke all at once, their voices mixing into a storm of worried sounds. Silence. The High Counselor's voice boomed through the chamber. His crystalline form sparkled under the bright lights as he turned to face the assessment team. "These findings, they cannot be real. You mean to tell us that these humans routinely survive things that would kill any normal species?" Dr. Mark stepped forward, his protective suit gleaming. "High Counselor, What we discovered goes beyond mere survival. Please, allow me to show you." He gestured, and new images appeared on the screen. The first image showed a human with a metal rod through their leg. This human not only survived this injury but continued to walk for help. Their blood contained something called platelets that stop them from bleeding to death. Then their body simply repairs itself. Gasps echoed through the chamber. On most worlds, such an injury would mean certain death. Professor Ann took over, bringing up the next set of data. Their young are born completely helpless, yet they survive in Earth's hostile environment. They can break bones and heal stronger. They can lose entire organs and live. Some can even survive having half their brain removed. The council members watched in horror as more images appeared. Humans lifting many times their body weight, running for days without rest, surviving in freezing waters, and eating things that should have killed them instantly. Commander Tom's scales turned a deep blue as he added his findings. Most disturbing is their response to threats. When faced with danger, humans don't just fight or flee. They adapt. They've created protection against every danger their world presents. And now they're looking to the stars. The High Counselor's crystal surface rippled with concern. "Show us their combat capabilities." New images filled the screen. Humans practicing various fighting styles, testing weapons, conducting military exercises. But it was the historical footage that truly terrified the council. "They call this Parker," Dr. Mark explained, showing humans leaping between buildings. They train their bodies to overcome any obstacle, just for fun. Their soldiers can fight for days with minimal rest. And this, he paused, showing images of human emergency responders. They willingly run into burning buildings to save others. Professor Ann's tentacles twisted nervously as she continued. They've turned their planet's deadliest materials into tools. They harness electricity, split atoms, and create new materials more durable than anything found in nature. They call it science and teach it to their children. The council chamber grew quiet as the implications sank in. These humans weren't just dangerous. They were constantly becoming more dangerous. "There's one more thing," Commander Tom said quietly. "They heal emotionally too. They can lose battles, face devastating setbacks, or suffer terrible tragedies, yet they come back stronger. They call it resilience and consider it normal." The High Counselor's surface had turned almost opaque with stress, and they're achieving space flight capabilities. Yes, all 3 team members answered together. "They've already visited their own moon," Dr. Mark added. "They did it using technology we would consider primitive, in ships that barely protected them from space. They're planning missions to nearby planets. Nothing seems to scare them." The council chamber erupted into worried discussions again. A species this durable, this adaptable, and this fearless would change the galaxy forever. The question was no longer if humans would join the galactic community, but what would happen when they did. "May the eternal stars help us all," the High Counselor whispered, watching footage of humans celebrating their first moon landing. "They're coming, and they don't even realize they're the most terrifying species we've ever encountered." The first official meeting between Earth's representatives and the Galactic Council's diplomatic team was not going well. The human delegation had arrived carrying containers of a dark, steaming liquid that set off every toxin detector in the room. "Please," Ambassador Ray from the alien delegation said, his translucent skin paling further, "put away that dangerous substance." The human diplomat, David, looked confused as he sipped his coffee. It's just my morning coffee. Would you like some?" The alien delegation moved back in horror. Their sensors indicated the drink contained multiple psychoactive compounds and was hot enough to cause serious tissue damage. Yet the human was consuming it casually while reviewing diplomatic documents. How are you still alive?" Ambassador Ray asked, watching David take another sip. "Oh, I'm not really awake until I've had my second cup," David laughed, completely missing the terror in the alien's voice. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out something even more alarming. "Would anyone like a chocolate cookie?" They're fresh from the bakery. The alien security team nearly evacuated the room. Their scanners showed the cookies contained theobromine, a compound deadly to most galactic species. The humans had brought poison to a peace conference and were offering to share it. The meeting continued with more shocking revelations. The human delegates kept doing things that terrified their alien counterparts. When the room got too warm, they simply removed layers of clothing, exposing their skin to the air. One human woman, Lisa, applied something called hand lotion directly to her exposed flesh. Your species willingly absorbs chemicals through your protective outer layer. The alien medical officer asked, recording everything with growing concern. Well, yes, Lisa replied, looking at her hands. It keeps my skin from getting dry. I also have some sunscreen if anyone needs it. The UV rays can be pretty strong today. The aliens were speechless. These humans not only survived intense radiation from their star, they had developed protective compounds and routinely spread them on their bodies. Things got worse when the humans suggested taking a break for lunch. The alien delegation watched in horror as their human counterparts consumed substances that had been deliberately exposed to heat and bacterial cultures. They called it cooking and fermentation. And this bread, David explained happily, has been made using a specific type of fungus. The same process we use to make beer. Ambassador Ray's assistant fainted. The idea of purposefully consuming fungus and fermented grain toxins was too much to handle. The final shock came when the humans proposed holding the next meeting in something called a sauna to help everyone relax. It's a small room that we heat up to about 80 degrees Celsius, Lisa explained cheerfully. You sit in it and sweat out all your stress. Very relaxing. The alien delegation immediately called for an emergency recess. They huddled in their ship, sending urgent messages back to the Galactic Council. These humans, Ambassador Ray reported, his voice shaking, they don't just survive in extreme conditions, they create new extreme conditions for enjoyment. They deliberately raise their body temperature for relaxation. They expose themselves to radiation for cosmetic purposes. They consume poisons for pleasure. As the alien team tried to compose themselves, they watched through the ship's windows as David and Lisa played something called Frisbee in the courtyard. They were voluntarily running around under their star's deadly radiation, catching a spinning disc and laughing. Most worrying of all, Ambassador Ray added to his report, they seem to have no idea that any of this is unusual. To them, this is all normal. The response from the Galactic Council was quick. Continue diplomatic relations at all costs. We cannot risk offending a species that treats deadly poisons as breakfast beverages. And whatever you do, do not agree to enter their heat chamber. General Cax, the Galactic Council's top military strategist, stared at the holographic display with his 3 eyes wide open. His team had spent the last month studying Earth's military history, and each new discovery made him more nervous. Play the simulation again, he ordered, his metallic scales clicking together anxiously. The hologram showed scenes from various human wars throughout history. What terrified the alien observers wasn't just the fighting. It was how humans kept improving their methods. They learned from every battle, adapted to every situation, and somehow got stronger after each defeat. Sir, Lieutenant Val reported, her crystalline form glowing with stress. You need to see this. Humans have something they call special forces. These warriors train themselves to survive in every environment on their death world. The display showed human soldiers swimming through freezing waters, crawling through burning deserts, and climbing snow-covered mountains. They could go days without sleep, weeks with minimal food, and still complete their missions. That's not the worst part, Colonel Ben added, his tentacles waving in agitation. Look at their regular civilians. He brought up new images showing ordinary humans doing extraordinary things. The aliens watched footage of firefighters running into burning buildings, rescue teams diving into raging floods, and medical workers fighting through disasters to save others. Regular humans, not soldiers. choosing to face death to help strangers. Their ability to wage war is unprecedented, General Cax said, reviewing the data. They've turned their most dangerous natural resources into weapons. But more importantly, they've developed something even more powerful. They call it logistics. The assessment team had discovered that humans could move massive armies across their planet, supply them in any environment, and support them under any conditions. They had mastered the art of fighting in every terrain their deadly world offered. And their training methods, Lieutenant Val added, pulling up more footage. They deliberately practice in harsh conditions. They call it being prepared for anything. They even have games that simulate warfare. The team watched recordings of human military exercises, soldiers carrying heavy packs through jungles, practicing combat in city ruins, jumping from flying vehicles into combat zones. Each activity would have been considered suicidally dangerous on most civilized worlds. There's something else, Colonel Ben said quietly, something that makes them truly dangerous. He displayed historical records of human conflicts. They can take massive losses and keep fighting. Their determination actually increases when things get worse. General Cax studied the battle statistics with growing concern. Other species would surrender after losing a certain percentage of their forces. Humans, instead, often fought harder. They called it fighting spirit or determination. Their technological progress is equally disturbing, Lieutenant Val reported. They went from primitive flight to space travel in less than 70 years. They developed atomic weapons, then created rules to limit their use. Not because they couldn't handle the weapons, but because they considered them too destructive. The final part of their assessment focused on human recovery abilities. After every major war, humans rebuilt their cities stronger than before. They turned battlefield medical discoveries into civilian treatments. They even preserved their damaged buildings as memorials to learn from their history. Submit the final report to the Council, General Cax ordered. Classification: highest priority. Humans are not just capable warriors, they're capable of everything. Their entire species has military potential. Every human, soldier or civilian, is a potential fighter, survivor, and innovator. As the report was transmitted, the assessment team watched a video of human children playing a game called Capture the Flag. Even their young were practicing strategic thinking and tactical movement. Add one more note, General Cax said grimly. Traditional military assessments cannot accurately predict human capabilities. They don't just fight wars. They rewrite the rules of warfare itself. And they're getting better at it every day. The Galactic Classification Committee met in their sealed chamber, surrounded by holographic displays showing data about Earth. The committee's job was simple: assign danger levels to newly discovered worlds. But Earth was proving impossible to classify using standard methods. "This can't be right," said head classifier Mike, his bioluminescent spots glowing with confusion. According to these readings, humans live in areas where the ground occasionally splits open and spews molten rock. Volcanoes, his assistant Pete confirmed, tentacles typing rapidly. And not only do they live near them, they study them up close. Some humans even go down into dormant volcanic craters for research. The committee members reviewed more data about Earth's natural disasters. Earthquakes that could level cities, storms that could flood entire regions, winds strong enough to throw vehicles through the air. Yet humans hadn't just survived these conditions. They had built warning systems to predict them. Look at their coastal cities, another classifier named Tim pointed out. They build massive structures right next to their world's giant bodies of water, knowing that massive waves could hit at any time. They call these waves tsunamis, and just prepare for them. The displays showed more examples of human adaptability. They had settlements in Arctic regions where the ground stayed frozen all year. They built cities in deserts where no rain fell for years. They even lived on small islands surrounded by endless ocean. Their cities themselves are remarkable. Pete added, they stack living spaces on top of each other hundreds of meters into the air. They dig complex tunnel systems under their largest cities. They build bridges across huge gaps and through major storm zones. Mike studied the survival requirements for humans compared to other species. Most galactic races needed carefully controlled environments to survive. Humans, by contrast, could adapt to almost anything. They don't even need pure water, Tim said in disbelief. They've developed ways to clean toxic water. They can even extract water from the air or ground when needed. And some of them deliberately drink dihydrogen monoxide with bubbles in it for pleasure. You mean carbonated water, Pete corrected. And yes, they seem to enjoy adding bubbles to various drinks. They also heat up beans and leaves in water to make stimulant beverages. The committee spent hours reviewing more data. Humans could survive losing large amounts of blood. They could live with artificial replacements for many body parts. They could even transform poisons into medicines. We have to classify Earth as a death world, Mike finally announced. But we need a new subcategory. No other death world has produced a species that thrives like this. The committee agreed. Earth wasn't just dangerous. It was dangerous in ways that had made its inhabitants incredibly resilient. Normal death worlds produced species that were simply tough. Earth had produced a species that was tough, clever, and constantly improving. What about quarantine? Tim suggested. Should we recommend isolating the whole solar system? Mike looked at the latest space exploration data from Earth. It's too late for that. They're already reaching for the stars. They've sent probes beyond their solar system. They're planning colonies on nearby planets, planets they consider more hostile than Earth. The final classification report was unlike anything the committee had ever produced. Earth was officially labeled as a Class X death world, with a unique note. Native species has surpassed survival requirements and achieved dominance over environmental hazards. Approach with extreme caution. Add one more thing, Pete said, watching a video of humans celebrating a space launch. The humans' greatest achievement isn't surviving their death world. It's turning it into a thriving civilization. They call Earth home, and they're proud of it. The committee members looked at each other nervously. How do you quarantine a species that treats deadly environments as their comfort zone? The answer was becoming clear. You don't. You just hope they're friendly when they finally reach the stars. The emergency meeting of the Galactic Council had been going on for 3 days. Representatives from every spacefaring civilization argued about what to do about Earth and its surprisingly dangerous inhabitants. The debate might have continued forever if not for what happened next. An alarm blared through the council chamber. A massive asteroid had broken apart near a populated world called Nexus, and pieces were heading straight for its largest city. The planet's defense systems had failed, and evacuation wasn't possible in time. How long until impact? The High Counselor asked, his crystalline form dimming with worry. 20 standard hours, came the response. The fragments are too large for our weapons to destroy, and too scattered for our shields to block. The council chamber erupted in panic. Millions would die. No one had a solution, until Ambassador Ray remembered something from the human diplomatic meetings. The humans, he said quietly at first, then louder. The humans. They'd been dealing with disaster scenarios like this for generations. They make entertainment about it. They plan for it. The council turned to the Earth delegation, who had been quietly watching the panic unfold. David, the human ambassador, stepped forward. We might be able to help. Let us contact Earth's space agencies. We've been practicing for this kind of situation for years. Within hours, Earth's top scientists and engineers were connected to the Council's communication system. They didn't waste time asking why their alien technology had failed. Instead, they focused on solutions. If we can't destroy the fragments, we'll deflect them, one human scientist explained, as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. We've been developing methods for this since the 20th century. The Council watched in amazement as humans from different countries worked together, quickly adapting their asteroid defense plans to alien technology. They thought in ways no other species had considered. The humans are suggesting we use the smaller fragments to hit the larger ones, Ambassador Ray reported, his translucent skin glowing with surprise. They want to turn the asteroid field against itself. Earth's space agencies launched into action. They coordinated with alien ships, calculated impossible seeming trajectories, and improvised solutions with unfamiliar technology. What seemed like a hopeless disaster to the Council was just another problem for humans to solve. Hours later, the fragments were safely deflected. Nexus was saved. The Council chamber was silent as they processed what had happened. "Now we understand," the High Counselor said slowly. "We've been looking at Earth and humans all wrong. We saw their world as too dangerous, their species as too resilient. We were afraid." David smiled. "On Earth, we have a saying. Necessity is the mother of invention. Living on our dangerous world taught us to solve problems, to adapt, to never give up." Professor Ann, who had been part of the original assessment team, finally understood. That's why they seek out challenges, why they climb mountains and dive into oceans. They're not reckless. They're preparing. "Exactly," Lisa, another human diplomat, added. "Every challenge we face makes us better at facing the next one. What you see as horrible dangers, we see as opportunities to improve." The Council members looked at each other as realization dawned. Earth wasn't the galaxy's most dangerous planet. It was the galaxy's greatest training ground. Humans weren't terrifying because they were powerful. They were valuable because they never stopped learning, adapting, and helping others. "We would like to propose a new classification for Earth," the High Counselor announced. "Not as a death world, but as the crucible of innovation. And we formally request Earth's help in preparing other worlds for similar challenges." David looked at his fellow human delegates, who all nodded in agreement. "We would be honored," he said. "After all, that's what humans do best, face challenges and help others overcome them." As the Council chamber erupted in applause, everyone finally understood the truth. Earth's dangers hadn't created monsters. They had forged heroes. The galaxy didn't need to fear humans. It needed to learn from them. The most dangerous planet had become the galaxy's greatest teacher, and its inhabitants were ready to share their most valuable lesson. There is no challenge that can't be overcome with determination, innovation, and cooperation.